Welcome to the Trombone Retreat, podcast of the Third Coast Trombone Retreat. Today on the podcast, I hang out with Ian Bousfield. My name is Sebastian Vera, and man, first of all, hi, we're still alive, we're still around. You know we'll never leave you. So something I'm pretty excited to announce is we have a YouTube channel. Some of you are already subscribed. But our YouTube, we haven't really been exercising it. We kind of use it to post some audio content. We have some really cool videos of past recitals. There's an amazing James Markey recital video from the Trombone Retreat. But I've really been into the idea of enhancing the podcast and creating experiential content, travel content. I love to travel, if you haven't heard me talk about it. And I had a chance to take an amazing trip to Europe this summer. I went to Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. I mainly was flying to Bremen, Germany, to get my Tyne trombone designed. I'm extremely excited and love my trombone, and got to hang out in the factory and stay there and hang out with Max and Olaf. And so I have some really cool videos from there. Then I went on to Hamburg, Germany, which I fell in love with. I think most people kind of have this idea of Germany if they're not from Europe. Americans, most of our idea of Germany is basically Bavaria and Oktoberfest. But Hamburg felt like New York in a lot of ways. It's an incredible, vibrant, modern city. And I got to hang out with my really good friend Jonas Burrow, who plays in the Staatsorchestra Hamburg. Got to see that incredible hall, the Elbphilharmonie, that's right on the river if you've never seen it. And it was just amazing. Went to Berlin for the first time for a couple days. Saw my really good friend Alex Nisbet, and he showed me all around. We had an amazing walk. I went to Prague. If you can tell, I was living on trains for a while. But Prague is one of my favorite cities. It's just beautiful, the lighting downtown. It's just this magical, mysterious city. And saw my good friend Thomas Borel, who wrote the Borel Trombone Concerto that I premiered at the ITF. He's one of the most talented young composers I've ever been around, so check out his music. Then I went to Vienna and got to hang out with Peter Steiner and Constanza for a couple days, and they showed me all around the city. Constanza's from there, and it was just really cool. We found Albrechtsberger's grave, which was really unique. Kind of stumbled on that. And then I went to Munich, and randomly, my friends in the Pittsburgh Symphony were on tour, and it was the first day of their tour, and they just happened to be there the same day I was planning on being there. So we had this huge dinner and hung out, and I saw another good friend, Felix Eckert, who's principal trombone in the Bavarian Radio Orchestra, and he gave us a tour of their opera there. And then I finally went to Bern, and this is where this interview and this video take place. I saw, of course, our good friend Justin Clark, who's bass trombonist of the Bern Symphony there, and I went paragliding, and there's going to be a video of that. He interviewed me in the sky, and he has an amazing YouTube channel. Check out, it's called Hot Air. It's honestly one of the most beautiful YouTube channels I've ever seen, and it barely has any subscribers because he doesn't advertise it, but he takes people up and does interviews, and it's really cool. And that's now where Ian Bousfield is living, and he invited me into his beautiful home, got to meet his amazing wife, Johanna, and I met his daughter, and we just had an amazing talk. I've wanted to interview Ian for a long time, and he's just, of course, an incredible trombonist and always been inspiring to me. I've had limited interactions with him in the past. We talked about it. I played in a masterclass for him, and I've heard him perform and seen some talks. But he's just such an open person, and he communicates so well. You know, check out his podcast, The Ian Bousfield Experience. We had a really cool talk. He gave me a mini tour of his house and his trombone studio and practice space, and it was just an incredibly enlightening talk, and I think you're really going to enjoy it, especially if you go over to our YouTube channel at Trombone Retreat. Please subscribe. It would be so awesome to get our followers up. We just have like 500 or so, but it'd be great if we got the same following as we have on our podcast and on Instagram. So check that out. Also, I'm about to go hop on a plane again. So I'm going to go meet Nick Schwartz in London. He's already there hanging out, doing stuff that Nick Schwartz does. And we've been invited by the British Trombone Festival and the British Trombone Society to do a live podcast at their event at the British Trombone Festival 2024, October 26th to 27th. And we'll be interviewing the incredible soloist Peter Moore, who used to be principal trombone in the London Symphony. You may know him from his fame growing up as a kid on these viral videos of I think it was like Britain's Next Classical Music Star. And I believe he won that competition. I'm excited to meet him and hang out and meet all these trombonists in England. I'm super excited about that. I'm going to judge a competition, and Nick's going to judge a competition. And I'm doing masterclass at the conservatory there. It's going to be a really short but sweet but fun little trip. We will have a booth in the vendors area for the trombone retreat, so please come and say hi. I'll have my limited edition JSV mouthpieces, my 1 and 2, to come try. And Nick will have mouthpieces from Long Island Brass. So come hang out. I think we may have some stickers too. So let's see. What else am I missing here? I hope you enjoy this podcast. Go check it out on YouTube. But it's also in audio form coming up. Thank you to Houghton Horns for your support. And HoughtonHorns.com is, of course, where you can go find those JSV mouthpieces. Houghton Horns, first class brass, HoughtonHorns.com. Enjoy the podcast. It's like it'll also be cool just to talk to you about podcasting in general, because I don't get to talk to many other people that, one, do podcasts, and two, like, trombone adjacent, which is how I like to describe what we do, because it's, we have a lot of listeners that, and you've probably had the same experience where you're just surprised there's people in certain places listening, and a lot of listeners that don't even play the trombone, aren't even musicians, and they just like hearing stories, because, I feel like everyone has a story. We share this thing that we play this trombone, but everyone has a unique experience and, values and, how they came to it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. I think when I started doing my podcast, it was kind of like a bit of COVID therapy for us. You remember those days where we didn't know whether the world as we knew it would ever return, and we didn't know quite what the future would look like, and it was a very difficult time for us all. Bank managers knew they were going to go back to being bank managers, but we didn't know whether the face of music had been changed forever, and we didn't know how long this thing was going to go on. And so in many ways, the podcast that I did, you were talking about doing a solo podcast, a lot of the ones that I did during COVID were like therapy. I would go into a room and I'd talk, if you like, to my other self. The person I was talking to I was just having a conversation with myself. And even now, I'll go and conduct a brass section in Norway, or coach an orchestra in Germany or something, and a viola player or a bassoon player will come up and say, thank you so much for this podcast or that podcast.
Isn't that cool?
The weirdest one I had was a bank manager. When we bought the chalet in the Alps, I was dealing with a bank manager, for want of a better word, an investor who I know, and he said, "So have you had your Sencha green tea yet this morning?" And I said, "Hey, Martin, how do you know this?" And he said, "Well, I listen to your podcast."
How did he find out?
Well, I think he'd Googled and he found, whatever. And he said, "So I've subscribed, I listened to your podcast." He said, "It's amazing how similar what you do is in many ways to what we do." I also have a former student, John Hall, who was one of my first ever students in the early 90s. And he went on, he was the .com specialist for the Financial Times in the 90s. And then they moved him to San Francisco, and he became friends with Steve Jobs and Gavin Newsom and all these things. He's all of those people. He's extremely successful. I don't want to go into all of the list of businesses that he consults for now, because I shouldn't do that, should I? But he contacted me and said, so much of what I do, I learn partly with you and partly with studying with others on the trombone.
Isn't that a nice
so it's
feeling?
Amazing how, how it sort of spreads out. So this podcasting thing that we have now is really quite cool.
Everything really translates, and it's just a fascinating thing. There's something nice about having, we do this thing that's very public, and, like, come to my concert, I do this thing, buy my CD, but there's something nice about anyone you meet in any situation, you can have this thing where you're like, hey, pick up your phone and you can hear this thing that I do.
It's true. Yeah. It's really nice. I mean, as I said, also, I came out of COVID a little bit scared because we were going through this time in our world where having an opinion was dangerous.
Well, you've never had any opinions.
No,
so
that's right. I usually sort of would hide them up my sleeve. Yeah, actually, what you hear on the podcast is about 30%. But I was like, it's a bit dangerous to have an opinion, and particularly American educational institutes were going through a bit of a tough time in that regard. So I kind of stopped doing the podcast. But now I don't care anymore. Now I've got an opinion, so I'll give it, hopefully respectfully, and hopefully a very well considered opinion. And you should never be, there are lines you shouldn't cross. But if you've got an opinion on certain styles of playing or conductors or whatever, it's what people want to hear. You know?
I feel like as long as you're not directly affecting someone's livelihood.
Oh, absolutely.
Then,
you can't be.
Or, they're, in a lot of ways you could define livelihood. I feel like we're scared of disagreeing with each other. No, like you don't see debate. I see that in England more. Who's that is it a BBC person? It's like, is it Crossfire, where he just basically like attacks a guy?
Yeah.
Or really debates in
there's something on CNN or something. No, BBC, you're right.
No, there's
right,
an English one, and I'm like, you don't hear that in America, like, because we're so afraid of conflict. We need to just be like, rah on one side or the other, and it's refreshing that you can like discuss something with someone and have opinions, and
I think one of the positive things about being in Switzerland is they have this thing called direct democracy, and that means that 4 times a year everyone goes and votes on referendums on whether it should be compulsory to have free-range eggs or whether we should ban diesel cars from cities or whatever, and the people vote. In fact, they just had one, some time ago they had one, like they said, on average, most European countries have 28 days more holiday in the year than we do.
Wow.
Here are the reasons why, obviously it would be a good idea, and here are the reasons why we don't think it would be a good idea. It lost 75%.
For more holidays.
Yep. The Swiss people said we don't want to reduce our productivity.
Okay.
And that, so people are not as stupid as governments would like them to be. And if you give them a responsibility, obviously now if you introduce that in America, it would be mayhem for the first quarter of the century. But because there'd be all kinds of strange things getting through, or in the UK. But in Switzerland, it's reasonable because the very government puts out the reasons for and the reasons against. It legitimizes people in society having different opinions because the government's showing you both sides, and they're apparently not supposed to show any bias on either side. So I think we're, in music, in the trombone world, it's human nature to want to draw lines, and that's really the next stage we have to get over. We're all in the same family. We're all in the same business. And I find that with my own students, if I speak what is apparently critically about another trombone player, they think I don't like that person. I'm not. I'm trying to curate, opinions. It's like, what do you think about this? Do you like this? Do you not like this? And it doesn't mean to say that I don't wish that particular trombone player all of the best, and however they're earning money, good for them. We want as many of us making money and having a wonderful career as possible. It's not like trying to push each other off the top of a mountain,
But by doing that, you're helping them identify their voice by like seeing like, I like this, I don't like this, what am I pulling from each person?
Exactly, that's the whole reason for it, is to say, do you like that? Why do you like that? What is it about it? Well, have you heard this? Can you hear this in what they're doing? And particularly also with other teachers who I have a lot of respect for, I'll say, don't think they get that right.
I remember, now that you said that, I think I remember hearing maybe an early podcast, and I'm going to be paranoid and double check that the camera's filming, because that's my biggest fear in life. We're good.
Tell me about it. You talk about these podcasts. Johanna and I almost never argue or disagree. There's never, but there was one like 30-minute ramble that I did for a whole podcast, and I was really happy with it.
That's what I want to talk about.
And she said, didn't record.
Oh.
Can you do it again? It's like, oh.
My mic is on. My mic is on. Okay. Biggest fear. Yeah, like how often am I here? Yeah, I think you mentioned it was something about, it was during the pandemic, and it was for students, like how to listen. And I think you talked about there's like an active listening and a passive listening, where, you know, I'm actively studying and recording and really analyzing what I think about these decisions, and then I'm putting it on in the background and seeing how it makes me feel, big picture stuff, and how both is really important.
My daughter is obsessed with Maria Callas and listens to her the whole time.
That's awesome.
And but you know what? It's
Not
really,
Taylor Swift?
I think she knows who that is. I don't, but I think she does. What the really cool thing about what we do is, it's like my daughter's obsessed with Maria Callas. We were watching a video of her singing in La Scala. And I said, would you like to go to La Scala? And she said, yeah. I said, would you like to go and stand right there? And she said, yeah.
Dad points.
Danny, you know, I don't normally, have you got any? And he said, yeah, we're doing Guru Leader in September. Do you want to come and play the alto part? Yeah. The only thing is my daughter would like to. He said, oh, sure, that's no problem. And we've even got Maria Callas's costumes. We can show them to her, you know.
Oh,
so, I mean, how cool is that to
Yeah.
just to be able to say, well, I don't normally play in orchestras, but, you know, we're going to do that. So anyway, so I was listening to some Maria Callas things, and Johanna came and said, look, we're going to talk about something about the kids or whatever, you know. And all of a sudden, I was talking about who was going to pick the kids up from school or wherever, and I realized there was water running down my face, normally known as tears.
Yes.
And that's how I experienced it.
English people, I thought they didn't cry.
I'm not really English.
So.
I'm a Leeds United football supporter, so you get used to it.
I'm Everton, unfortunately.
Oh, and that's a nice, good. That's a good club to support. Yeah.
I don't get that very often. Thank you.
No, great. And you know, it's like I wasn't listening, but he was having an effect on me. He's going in subconsciously. It was really, really bizarre. And so I think, particularly young players sit down and they want to make decisions. Good, bad, like it, don't like it. Rather than identifying. When you're tasting wine, you identify what the wine is. I don't mean like it's from here. Like, what are the qualities of this wine? Whether you like it or not. If you're a professional wine taster, which I on occasion have been, you're not deciding whether you like it or not. That might be the last question you ask. You know, what is this? What are the qualities of it? Is it true to its terroir? It's an Italian recording. Does it sound Italian? What is it to sound Italian? You know, and I think that's the problem that a lot of trombone players make. It's this tribal thing. It's like, this person's the best trombone player in the world. And if you ask me who's the best trombone player in the world, I would find that really, it's like saying, what's your favorite wine? And the answer is, well, it depends what I'm eating, or whether the sun's shining, or whether it's winter or summer, or who I'm with, what the occasion is. I'll give you the best wine in the world, in my opinion, for 20 different scenarios. It'd be 20 different ones. So it depends what I'm listening to, you know? And so to stop thinking, this is my favorite trombone player, this is my favorite Mahler symphony, this is my, you know, and I think that's the first step to learning how to listen.
And that gets us out of the comparison game, which, you know, is something I talk about a lot, about, you know, we're not all trying to be the best version of one thing, you know? No, I mean, that's a recipe for, you know, depression in a lot of ways, constantly comparing yourself, like obviously understanding what you're interpreting and everything, but, you know, bringing your own voice to the thing. Gosh, just talking to you, these little files in my head of memories. So I'll tell you, we've actually interacted, I believe, once before, and I've seen you. So the first time I saw you play was Denton, Texas, University of North Texas, ITF.
2002.
Wow, good memory. And
I was fat and I had a beard.
That is not something I recall.
And I was with Alison. I was with wife number 2. I actually spoke to on the phone yesterday for half an hour. She's now officially my sister, kind of thing. So, we're just really close. It's cool. It's really good.
I want to talk about all your wives.
Yep, let's do it.
And I think you played Bluebells, or you played a
Oh,
prior.
I usually do.
Yeah, and it was wonderful. I loved it. And you did a round table with other orchestra principals, and then you came to. I was in grad school at the Mannes College of Music.
Okay.
And you came on, either a Vienna tour.
2004.
Yeah, and I played for you. I played the ride for you.
Ah, okay.
And there's 2 things I remember from that master class. One, you talked about the prevalence of hernias with trombone players, and,
yes.
and how we often are working too hard with how our instrument's built, which we could talk about that forever. But one thing that really stuck with me, and kind of on the topic of what you're saying, and please correct me if I'm telling this story incorrectly, but like understanding styles in different cultures and different music, especially, I live in America. Living here, I've been in 3 countries in the last week, which is just so cool. And you see all the subtle differences. And you talked about like when I really wanted to understand how to interpret French music, I went and asked my colleague who was French, and he was like, "Oh, well, you just play. It's really easy.
Exactly.
You just play the notes on the page. You know the story."
Yeah.
Then I asked my Italian colleague, "How do I interpret Italian music?" "Oh, it's really easy. You just play the notes on the page." And then you had this epiphany where it's about you need to go to the place, eat the food, hear the language, feel the weather, and that's when it starts. Is that kind
you have to understand the culture. You have to understand, really, if we're going to be stylistically accurate, there are 2 ways of approaching it. There's one of the world's most big-time conductors, who I won't name, who is very famous for German repertoire, now never conducts in America because he's so busy. He just sticks to 3 or 4 orchestras. And he said what he liked about conducting in America was every morning he would start with a white piece of paper, and he could write anything he wanted on there. And he liked that. Like there was no sort of origin. You could start with the Bruckner Symphony and do anything you want with it. They weren't sitting there sort of like, this is our music and we play it this way. And as opposed to that, you go to an orchestra like the Vienna Philharmonic or the Berlin Philharmonic or Staatskapelle Dresden or whatever, and there's this kind of established heritage as to how you do it, because that's the place on the earth that the music, if you like, comes from. And so if you wish to change that, it's like trying to steer a huge ship. It's, you can turn as much as you like, but it's going to go straight on for quite a while. So if you truly are interested in the stylistic origins of the music, and I can see the case for both, whether you do or you don't, then you have to look into what were the instruments that they played on. So if you want to play a Bruckner Symphony, you need, first of all, let's take that as an interesting example, because the first 8 Bruckner Symphonies, I believe, were played on alto, tenor, and bass valve trombones. Probably a good reason to change that. But, that was the origin of the music. And so at the time, the whole brass section was playing on rotary valves, from the tuba direct through the horns. So that would have been much more unanimous. Whether it would have been a great sound or not, I don't know, it would have been unanimous. So shortly after that, you got the Crushbys and the Heckles, going 1880s, 1890s, the first Germanic romantic trombones, which, for the record, are not medium bow trombones. This theory that the German romantic trombone is a medium bow instrument or dual bow is not true. Lech and Crushby didn't start making medium bow, dual bows till 1920. And I think it was partly due to the onset of jazz and that sort of thing. And so back in those days, they were a larger bow. We play 5-4-5. They were 5-5-5. They're actually bigger.
Really?
They're actually bigger. And then I have some here in Bern.
Did that give like a width to the sound?
The really fascinating thing about it was, if you look at the first trombone parts to Lulu or Wozzeck or something like that, you think, wow, they must have been. Because, like today, we find it tough. Wozzeck, all on the tenor trombone, by the way, folks. I find it much easier on those, even though they're bigger. It's kind of like you find the middle of the note any way you want. It's got a huge center.
Yeah, you can spin a lot of air through it.
Yeah, and it's not so... and that's it. You put a lot of air in, but not much comes out. You can go bang, and it goes... Ooh. It's really... So in many ways, inefficient. The instruments that we've got now are so efficient. You go, boom, the opposite, So, but if you want to know the heritage, you need to look at the history. What was the politics? What was the society? Who was Bruckner? Where did he come from? What were the instruments? How did it sound? Play those instruments. Play Mahler 3 on a 1892 Heckel, which I've done. It's like,
wow.
That's the sound that Mahler had in his head. And those things, for example, you can't break the sound on them. You get to a certain point and then they go, and they stop. So you can't make an aggressive sound on them.
So it's always like
It's always big, it's always warm. And that's got to key in. It's got to change your approach as to how you play this stuff. So if you really want to take it seriously, that's the route you go down. Who was Mahler? When was he? Where was he? Go into all of that, do the study. What did it mean? What did the instruments sound like? What are the articulations? Why did he write an accent on every note? I assume by that he didn't want it legato.
Something I've been talking to on this trip with a lot of trombonists is like, how do you feel the relationship between just language and the way people articulate in certain countries is versus their style?
I've been through that. It's like people from the south of the US saying we can't play fast because we don't articulate when we speak. And that if you listen to me, I'm from the north of England, so it's like, when we talk. So I've heard examples that support that and also don't support that. So I'm not sure. I think it could play a role, yeah.
Like in Germany, for example, I feel like they really enunciate clearly.
Yeah.
And my German friends think I'm mumbling all the time when they hear English. And from what I've been told, some of their attacks may seem stronger than what we're used to in the States at times. But I mean, I guess it's so you can't generalize the entire country.
I think that's a stylistic thing. If you listen to the greatest recordings, if you listen to Death and Transfiguration, Zell, 1954, if you listen to Sinfonia Domestica, Rainer, 1958, those orchestras were largely immigrant orchestras. They were a mixture of Russians and, Germans or whatever, French. It was, as well as a lot of Americans as well. And listen to the articulation of those American orchestras back then, and listen to the same orchestras playing those pieces now. It's not like that. I listened the other night to a remarkable recording, Dvorak's 7th Symphony, London Symphony, Antal Dorati in the 60s. Exactly, and I'm not talking about brass players, the articulation you get from the strings. The polarization of the difference between legato and detached, and the greater understanding of the phrases that comes through that. And you listen to the London Symphony Orchestra, like with Colin Davis recording of it, now it's gone. That articulation's gone. So that's America, that's England. If you listen to, I think the Vienna Philharmonic is probably still the last orchestra that really will ping the front of notes, one of them, which is the same as they always did. I think what went wrong stylistically and in a brass playing point of view is people say, have you heard those recordings of the Vienna Philharmonic in the 30s and the 40s and 50s of the Berlin Philharmonic? Have you heard the trombone playing? It's horrible, and it is. It's rancid, it's out of tune. Usually you can hear the second trombone player is like on the way towards retirement, and it's destroying all of the chords, and yeah. And if you listen to the London Symphony, the Cleveland, Chicago recordings of the same time, it's like, well, there's no comparison, It's like, this is world-class brass playing, this is not. That's not to say there weren't some world-class brass players in those orchestras at the time. There were, in the Vienna and Berlin, there were some world masters. But it doesn't mean the style was wrong. And I think that's where it went wrong. If you want to listen to that and say, that's really bad trombone section playing, agree.
Yeah, listen to the style.
But yeah, is that, what about the sound? What about, So I think that's where we can lose context if we're not careful.
And that's why I love getting opinions of non-musicians,
Oh, thank you.
I love Thank you. Nice to meet you. Tell me what you do again. Like, for example, I used to be obsessed with, like, on Sirius XM, which is this, like, satellite thing, the radio. I don't think they have it here, or they maybe. They used to have the Met Opera player, and they had archives from the beginning of the Metropolitan Opera, and they would play recordings late at night from, like, the 20s, and you would, it's the same thing with, the brass playing. But the excitement of the style and the energy they played with, it was like rock and roll. And any person that listens to that's going to connect to that emotion.
Is it Bruno Walter? Is it NBC or if the Bruno Walter Brahms symphonies with NBC? Oh.
Some of those big records.
They should stop recording Brahms symphonies right there. It's like, okay, everything that happened after that, with the exception perhaps of the Carlos Kleiber ones, And then, of course, recording changed with Karajan, because I think one of the problems we have is, when I went to Vienna, the guy said, when we did Don Carlos with Karajan, it was like, and he was saying, what's the problem? Didn't you eat breakfast? Come on, It was like, I never played for Karajan. I missed out on him because when I was in the European Youth Orchestra, we didn't want to play for him because we were idealistic. And we actually said, no, we don't want to do that. And can you imagine that? So,
and could you describe that?
What do you mean? Because of the Second World War, perceived Second World War connections.
Wow.
And a group of young players said, we don't think we want to do that. That group of players is now, by the way, the Chamber Orchestra of Europe. We're the ones who moved away into that. And it's great. When you're young, you need to be idealistic, It seems quite extreme now. But,
let's talk about young Ian a little bit.
Oh, God. Don't know. You know what?
York,
there
England.
There are two types of people, as far as I can see. There are the growers and the developers, and there are those who are what they are. Okay. And I think partly because I never really had a teacher as a trombonist, I've always realized that I've had to be the searcher. I've had to be constantly trying to develop and find answers. And I think if there's any success in my teaching, it's due to its originality, as in I've had to work. Of course, I've tried to steal from whoever I can, from Arnold Jacobs through.
There can be a benefit to that in a way, because you don't have all these rules.
I've never been indoctrinated, either as a trombone player or as a teacher. And so that means I believe in the freedom of the individual who's in front of me to make their own decisions. Joe Alessi doesn't sound like Glenn Dodson. Christian Lindbergh doesn't sound like his teacher. Maybe Jürgen sounds a bit like Michel, maybe. I certainly don't sound like, I had quite a few lessons with Dudley Bright. I don't sound like him. Although his sound is in my head probably with every note that I ever play. As in every lesson, there's something from Niklaus Harnoncourt, Michael Tilson-Thomas, Claudio Abbado, you name it, Schulte. But I kind of realized I had to grow and develop. I realized in my 20s I didn't really like who I was. And so...
Trombone-wise or person-wise?
Well, actually, my trombone playing changed, and personally as well. And so I think with every young person who stands in front of me, I make it clear to them they can be whoever and whatever they want. They can grow into that. And so the development that I've had emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, is something that continues until today. I never start from the position that I know really a lot about anything. I'm always trying to learn, which has led me, before we started, I was actually looking at becoming, starting my own snail farm. It's like looking into it in detail. I'm open to anything, it's like learning about wine, it's about learning about food. And
that's the cool thing, because everything you've learned from pursuing an art, you realize when you apply it to other things, you can apply these skills. And often you see musicians, their learning curve is...
My son, who is 38 years old and lives on the other side of Bern, That's an interesting life story. I don't know whether you'll listen to this. He's a great kid. I left his mom when he was 11 and my daughter was 9. And for anyone who's been divorced, I don't think there was one thing I didn't expect, and that was a look in his eye when I told him. And that has haunted me for the rest of my life. And we always had a great relationship, and we always spent a lot of time together. But about 4 years ago, he sold his house, he sold his stuff up in England, and got in his car and he drove here to Switzerland. He said, kind of along the lines of, you left me, I'm coming back.
Wow.
And so he moved in, actually, right at the start of COVID. And no one was giving anyone a job.
Yeah.
So a year later, he was still living with his dad. And our little kids love him. He's their brother, and they're really cool. Turn up to school. This is my brother. He's a big boy, and he works out a lot. And think Sam Schlosser. He's kind of like that size of guy, and he was a trombone player when he was a kid. And he gave it up when he was 16 because he said he didn't like practicing and he got nervous. And I said, well, maybe I should give it up as well. So he was unemployed for a year, and he learned mother tongue French and German because he just got up in the morning and he worked. And it was that goal-orientated ability to look at things in a different way that he'd learned from being a musician, which he himself says now he's a fantastic job. And he's married, and, so it's really cool. But that education that we get as musicians, as trombone players, I think, like I say, patience is work without expectation of reward. If you go and do 2 hours practice and expect anything out of it, you're going to be disappointed. I'm still trying to fix things I've been working on for 40 years, and I never will. I know I never will fix them, but I still try every day.
I mean, isn't that nice in a way, if we look at it like that art is imperfectible? Yeah. I mean, it's the only thing I never got bored at.
Yeah. It reminds us of our humanity, I think, that it is, very human to screw up.
It's about the pursuit. Yeah.
And I think that may be where music is partly going wrong now, because I think the idea of what's screwing up has changed. Getting things right is now playing the right notes. I remember 20 odd years ago, it might even have been in Denton. No, it was before that. I sat on the jury for an ITF competition with a guy called John Swallow. Was first trombone in the Metropolitan Opera.
Taught at Yale, yeah.
And played the first performance of the Gunther Schuller Eine kleine Posaunenmusik. And I was on the jury with him. And, this kid got up and played all the notes. He's quite a famous player now. And I like that, And John said, yeah, but don't forget, unmusicality is also a technical weakness.
Ooh, unmusicality.
And, I think we've forgotten that to an extent. Jürgen van Rijn, on his live recording of the Tomasi.
He missed notes, and I loved it.
And he put them on that, and I think
that cool?
is a sign of your greatness. It's like... the closest I've got to do is if you listen to Mahler 2 with Pierre Boulez and the Vienna Philharmonic, that don, deen, 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 don, don, deen, don, don, don. And we went into the playback room. It was taken from the concert, and the producer looked at me, and Boulez looked at me, and I said, it's a bit high. And they said, do you want to do it again? I said, no, that's what I did. And it's high on the Deutsche Grammophon recording. It's what I did. It's life, And there's a great English saying, which is, if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. So audiences love hearing people pushing themselves to the point where it's almost going to break. Chiamati.
Is this the garden?
Oh, don't. That's terrible. It's a mess this year, but... they're the raised beds, but they're in a terrible mess. And then...
Yeah, but that's a lot of really nice potential in there. That's cool. There's the pool. We almost did the interview there,
Yeah, there we go. And here's the kitchen with my wife, and this is being filmed. There we go.
What are we making here?
Have you got a sourdough going?
Yep.
Wow.
That's for Annick.
Oh, nice.
Beans on toast on rice.
Yeah, there we go.
Classic.
And some sourdough bread coming.
Yeah, I'll show you my son's very dirty bedroom, because you see, here's my... That's my boy's room with his mice and his Lego and all that sort of stuff. And
Legos are
boys'
universal.
room, you know. So we've had a bit of a break now for two reasons.
Welcome back to
So
Politics Talk and
it's
Snail
cold.
Talk with Ian Bousfield and Sebastian Vera.
It's August in Switzerland, so it's getting a bit chilly now. So
Do you mind setting the scene a little bit?
okay, as I look through the window there, I can see right to the other side of Bern. So we're just on the outskirts of Bern, which is a beautiful, beautiful medieval city. And
Oh my gosh, yeah, walking around last night.
it's lovely.
Incredible.
It's totally untouched by any war, so the history goes right back. We live here. We have very fortunate to have an extremely large house here. We live on the downstairs. The upstairs we do as an Airbnb, which is booked out the whole time, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
downstairs.
thanks for offering it. To
There
me,
you go. It
this
was booked.
luxury.
You should have told me in more time. You know, it's like it gets booked out. We could have blocked it. Recording studio downstairs, swimming pool just down there, huge wine cellar down there, and this is where we kind of live and work. So I travel to Zurich Airport from here. I teach my class here. I record my podcast, and we are actually going to do my first attempt at recording properly downstairs in the studio. We've just finished building it. I'm going to try that this afternoon. And then this afternoon, I'll get on the train and go to our other place, which is at 1,000 meters up in the Alps, just above Montreux. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at these lovely mountains called the Dent du Midi. And on the other side of that is Mont Blanc. So we're right up there. So that's where we go to spend our free time when we get it, if we get it. And I've just seen my schedule till Christmas, and I haven't got much of that. So, but it's close enough.
But you love that, right? You love being busy.
Yeah, I do. I think the great thing is I do so many different things that I'll never get stuck. I mean, if you look at what I've done this summer, I did a tour with there's this brass ensemble, Vienna Philharmonic, Berlin Philharmonic, kind of German brass mixture called the Philharmonic Brass. I went and did a tour with them, which was fantastic. Amazing group, wow. Mm-hmm. And then I had a little tour with the brass quintet, with the Reinhold Friedrich Brass Quintet, which is Reinhold, Jeroen Berwiarts, two of the best trumpet players in the world. You know, it's not often I sit down and say, thanks for letting me play. But it's really is. That's been nice. Did a wonderful masterclass in Sweden. Jim Markey was there as well, which was great. Coached the Gustav Mahler Youth Orchestra. I'm just getting ready to do a recital. Then I'm going to go play in La Scala. And, and then I've got some solo concerts in England, and then there's concertos with orchestra and that sort of stuff. So if you look at all of the different things that I do, and then every time I go to teach, it's really a privilege, because I think, one after other big-time student is coming through the door, and they're more in practice than I am, and they're more motivated than I am, and they get better. They get better, and I don't. No, but this year, all 5 of the leavers will be sitting in an orchestra on the 1st of September, and last year 4 out of 5.
What a great feeling, right? You must not be doing something wrong.
It's every September I'm in mourning. I feel like, these students are okay, but not like the ones that just left, They're such wonderful people, and they all played so well. And then I realized that every September, and to watch people, it's like, so the question is, do I have any superstars in my class? In September is not yet. That's the answer. Not yet, no.
If they were, would you tell them they were?
I think it's really important that everyone knows what they can do. I really do. I will spend, depending on the personality type, but I will spend up to 3 months establishing with someone what it is that they do well. Mm-hmm. Because there's always a little bit of office keeping that needs to be done, where it's like, okay, we need to fix this, we need to work on that. And sometimes working on problems can be painful, because people don't distinguish between, like he says in The Godfather, this is not personal, this is business. You know, they'll say, okay, I'm bad at this. They'll say I'm bad, you know, and they'll take it personally. So if they're starting from the cushion of like, I do this well, I do this well, I do this well, I do this well, but I need to work on that, I think it's a much softer blow. So, like I say, you have to read the personality type because, you know, with some young people, they just need a little and they'll just fall to pieces, you know? So you have to make sure, and there's no reason for that, you know, you have to make sure that they're aware of what their strengths are before you maybe start looking at the weaknesses. Otherwise, because they're already looking at the weaknesses, they never look at the strengths. Who does? Who walks into a practice room and says, I'm great at these list of things? Right, because his problem, you know, you're troubleshooting, fix this. And then they go into a room. So a student goes into a room and says, I can't do this, and this. And then they're going to see a teacher, and the teacher says, yeah, you forgot about this, and this as well. You know, so it's really, you know, and without the feeling of positivity, without someone going into a room feeling, great, I'm going to practice, you're never going to achieve anything. So
every now and then you have the rare student who does think they're like, everything's great, and they don't want to think about that.
Ones, Well, I think you experience that in America more than we do in Europe, because
like sunshine.
Yeah, I think European teachers do tend to keep people's feet on the ground a little bit too much. And in America, it goes too much in the you are a beautiful, unique individual who's about to change the world. And it's very painful, I see, for a lot of American people when they hit 30, 35 and realize that that ain't going to happen. Because not everybody can.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't mean to say they're not an amazing person trying to be the best person they can possibly be. And that we've always got to grow and we've always got to learn, and you're going to make your way and have a happy life. That's the goal, isn't it? Oh yeah, you might like this one. But most people are going, there you go, that's a nice one. And this one, that means I'm a chevalier in France for wine.
Wow.
There you go.
See, I came too early in the day.
There you go. Well, we can show you down there if you like. And that's my only hi-fi system, but it is a good one. It's a name.
Okay.
They're really, it's like 480 watts. You can't have it even halfway. It's amazing. So all this stuff, so the furniture, all of this furniture stuff was made by my dad.
Really?
And these drawings like this here, all done by my dad. He changed his career every 10 years. He was the same as me. He made all this stuff in his retirement. I remember, I'm sure my wife, who's wonderful. I remember one of the most painful things, and she's American. She was first drum on in the Boulder Symphony when she was really young, 18, 19, something like that. I think she said, realizing that I wasn't going to change the world was one of the most painful things. Because in America, you're all raised to believe you can change the world, which on the one hand, you always see what a wonderful thing to bring a kid up believing. But there's no mechanism in place when you realize that, 300 million people can't, all be the best, And so I think I've had that with American students when I've used the word no. And they've looked at me like, I'm the first person who's used the word no, So, and I think with students with me, once they realize that it's not top down, that it's eye to eye, and that we are both involved in the same project.
Wow. That
it's our project, that every student who comes in, and I don't know how much longer I can do this because it's breaking me, it's exhausting me.
Really?
It's our project. Their success is on my shoulders.
You put all that on your shoulders.
Yeah. So if I take somebody into my class, they know I believe they can fulfill those dreams. When someone says they want to study with me, I would say, what are your dreams? And sometimes I'll say, I can't do that for you. I'm sorry, I can't be your teacher. But I always believe in everybody. So, yeah, the odd student who doesn't win a job, it hurts.
But at what point can you, you can't do it for them.
No, but I always have a reality check. I always say, look, you've told me this is where you want to go, this is where you are, this is the path. And it's your choice as to whether you take that path or not. So, but I'm lucky I get good students. So most of them...
They have the want to already.
Oh, I mean, I occasionally, I don't very often do master classes, but occasionally I'll go into another institution and do something I think, wow, so this is like normal teaching. Because the teaching that I do in Europe, that Stefan Schultz does, that Jonas Bieland does, the students are amazing. I mean, you know, and then in other classes you get some amazing, but it's just, I'm spoiled.
I mean, but you have to allow because I struggle with that. It's a certain level of vulnerability you have to allow to invest in a student that much where it's going to hurt that much if they're not successful. Whereas you can have the approach of like, okay, I'm a guide. You know, I'm here. I'm going to tell you everything I know, but it's up to you. Because it's just being able to control the success is impossible. So, but I guess you have to make that leap, right?
Yeah, I think I have a person in front of me, not a student and not a trombone player. And if I get that person in the right place, in their head, everything else will happen. And that's what I'm seeing. It's not about instructing someone as to how to operate the trombone. That's actually quite easy. But for them to be successful, they have to be in the right place. And sometimes it's more difficult than in others. But, you know, if you went to see a lawyer, you're paying them an awful lot of money to act on your best interests all of the time. And that's how I see myself. I'm not there to be their friend, although many of my former students are very close friends. That's not my primary role. I'm there to be their advocate. I'm there to represent them and their best interests all of the time. And if that involves being tough with them every now and then, that happens, but very rarely. You know, very rarely. The toughest I will ever get with a student is, and with me, when it gets tough, my voice goes quiet. And I don't swear.
That's more. I think that's more powerful when you know someone that cares about you is disappointed.
Yeah. When I'm mildly grumpy, I swear and shout. You know, when it's like, you know, I'll say, look, could you do this, and do this, and then I'll say, I now know you didn't do what I asked you to do last week. What? No, you didn't. Because that's exactly what I asked you to do last week, and you just got a lot better in 10 minutes. So that tells me that you weren't doing it the last week, and that's about as tough as I ever get. It's like, you know, you're going to do what I ask or not. You can say no. You can say you don't want to. But you have to be able to back it up. If you think, I don't think this is going to work for you, great, let's talk about it, you know?
And you tell them that, and you're like, I would really love to not have to have this conversation again next week.
But they usually then feel a bit embarrassed, because it's like, you know, if what I'd asked you to do wasn't working, then you wouldn't have got better. Well, you've just gone like that in 10 minutes. So it is working, you just haven't done it.
Can you talk a little bit about, I think a lot of people in America might not understand you see a common career trajectory in Europe of, you know, you perform and it's very prestigious to get a teaching position later on, maybe after you perform or maybe sometimes during. In America, you could be, you know, doing it when you're very young, right out of school. And that's what brought you here. The Hochschule,
Hochschule der Künste in Bern,
Okay.
And I think a lot of it's a personal thing. I never wanted to teach as a side hustle. I always felt that if someone was going to travel halfway around the world to put their future in my hands, I had to be there for them. And so it was very important for me to move to wherever that was going to be it Eastman, which was a possibility, or moving back to London or Vienna, which was a possibility, or here. So we moved here, and if I showed you my schedule, I was like, teach Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, fly to Chicago, Next week, teach Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Next week, teach the week after, go to Japan Wednesday to Wednesday. You know, I make that commitment. I think the biggest thing about being a teacher is being there for the student. And I don't mean literally just physically, but they know that you're in it with them. And one of the first signs of that is to say, right, because I think I'm the only, if you like, top trombone player in the world who does that, who says, I'm playing concertos with orchestras, I'm conducting professional orchestra brass sections, you know, I'm designing instruments, whatever, but I'm going to be here for you. I don't think there are any others who do that, you know?
But how do you, so you prioritize time. So do you have like a set rule where like, I'm never going to be gone longer than 2 weeks in a row kind of thing? Like, so you get
I'm
consistency.
away for 2 weeks in this semester, and that's the second time in 12 years. So, or I have been away for 2 weeks where I'll teach Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, fly Thursday, miss the next week, and then teach the back end of the following week. So that means I'm only missing theoretically 1 week. But the semester starts middle of September. I start teaching next week. That's end of August. So I will have done 2 weeks teaching before the semester starts.
Oh, you get started early.
And I spread it. So, you know, a lot of these students, they're kind of like professional level people. They come and go, and I'll teach through the semester break. I'll do 2 weeks in the semester break. And I'll continue after the semester's finished in the summer. And the deal for them is they don't go 3 months without seeing me in the summer.
Wow.
And they get, so we never have, occasionally I get a situation where it's like, I'll teach one person on a Thursday and then see them again the next Tuesday. It's like, well, you didn't have much time to work on what, you know, so. Apart from one student I have at the moment, a Japanese young lady who is, I have to tell you a nice story. It's like, I never expected her to be that good. I never expected her to explode like that. She's been with me 1 year.
That's the best.
I never realized she was that smart. I think that's the thing. It's like on a Thursday, you say, could you take a look at the Tomasi for Tuesday? And so it's like Tuesday, I said, did you look at the Tomasi? She said, yeah, I've learnt it.
And she hadn't looked at
all
it
of
before.
it. She hadn't played it before. I said, so we could do any of, yeah, I've learnt it. First year, you know? So sometimes that happens. But in America, you've got so many institutions. I mean, there aren't enough orchestras to fill all of the teaching jobs.
Right.
So, and also, if you are in one of the top American orchestras, you've probably negotiated a salary that is way in excess of whatever any university could pay. Whereas here, it tends to be a little bit the other way around. You know, it's, you know, if you're in a middle of the road, as it were, German orchestra, it's a good orchestra, you know, and you're probably going to get paid more to teach, you know. And downstairs is a bit of a mess because we're literally just finishing the
Yeah, it didn't give you a
the
heads up.
recording studio. So I built this practice cube here. So if I want to practice at 3 o'clock in the morning,
Whoa.
nobody hears anything.
You even have a little window in there.
Yeah, have a look in there.
No way.
So, and that's my wife's green hobart. I can go in there, I love it, but you don't hear anything. You know, the kids, after I built it, the kids kept saying, where's Dad? You know, it's really cool.
That's very cool. Okay, just for, you know, for some people that may not be as familiar with the trajectory of your career, and we could do like mini Cliff's Notes, but I mean, that's always difficult. But, you know, you grew up in the British brass band system, which I've always been fascinated with, and I've played with a brass band in Pittsburgh.
At River City, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. You played for Jim then, huh?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
He's
Currently
one of
on
the
leave.
best tuba players I ever heard.
He's an incredible musician.
He's incredible. He's amazing.
Incredible musician, and I've learned a lot from him. He's been tough on me, but
Yeah.
I've learned a lot from him. And I think personally, I've said this before, I think I've seen young brass players go through a youth brass band kind of situation, and young players go like through a youth orchestra, and the level of playing is so much because you're
playing the whole time.
The level of endurance, the level of understanding phrasing,
chamber music,
playing solos, melody, which you don't as a young trombonist. It's night and day. And it's like, do you think back about how that started your foundation very often?
I guess when I was a kid, you were either going to play cricket or play in a brass band. You know, that's because it was the northern industrial, probably like Pittsburgh actually. And every village had a brass band, and every factory had a brass band. And it was like paid recreation for the workers when they were being treated like shit, you know, to work in horrible conditions. The company at least provided a brass band, a male voice choir maybe, a football team and a cricket team. And they had their own social club, you know, so the brass band would play in the pub the whole time, and they had free instruments. Didn't have much else, but they had free instruments. So that kind of died out. It wasn't as bad as that when I was a kid, but that was the heritage of it. And so I started playing when I was 7. My dad, my uncle were cornet players, and
they got your embouchure set up basically, or did they just hand you something?
They just handed me something, and it kind of worked. But it's like my son, he's 11, and you just give him a trombone, and his embouchure's exactly the same as mine.
Really?
He's identical. Huh. He sounds the same. He walks onto the stage like I do, you know. So my father-in-law is a very famous musician, and so they're sort of like, if you look at the breeding that's going down into him, you know, musically, I think my son is better than I am.
That's what you hope for, right?
Yeah, I've never had to talk to him about music.
Wow.
Ever.
It's kind of, that dynamic's difficult, isn't it?
No, he's kind of, no, because I think he realizes that I'm good and that I care, and it's now reaching the stage, like he asked such a smart question. I said, this bit in this Rachmaninoff song, can you hear the crying? And he said, how do I express that? 11-year-old kid, how do I express that? I said, well, you've got to feel the emotion. I said, do you know what it's like to feel desperate? Oh, yeah, you know, kids, and it's like, lost your balloon or whatever, you know. Yeah, you know, my ice cream fell on the floor. So you need to feel that and then play it. And he did it, and I nearly cried. It was
my God.
Wow. To watch a kid discover that, you know, and you say, yeah, that's how you do it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we can laugh like that an 11-year-old hasn't like gone through life's intense ups and downs that we have in a fuller life, but in a way don't they have like less layers where they can tap into those emotions a little more quickly?
Yeah, I think particularly this generation of kids, and this is a podcast on itself, we're trying to protect our children from hardship, and that's not part of the human disposition. We have to learn to deal with the extremes. And I don't think we're doing our children a service by trying to make life too comfortable for them. So, because you don't have that repertoire, the human disposition of everything from desperation to absolute elation. We finish up just being all in the middle band if we're not careful, you know? And in many ways, kids get protected from the extremes. And who as a parent would not want to protect their kid from one of those extremes?
Yeah, no highs, no lows.
But if you don't know how to deal with hardship, then you don't know how you, later on in life, to fight your way through the tough times when they do come. I was raised in now what would unquestionably be called poverty. There were a couple of years where my mum cried at the lack of Christmas presents or whatever, and, you know, you had one set of clothes, one for school, one for free time, such a set of clothes. We went on holiday once a year, an hour's drive from where we lived, if we were lucky. Some years we didn't. And my dad, when he bought my first trombone, he was a teacher, and he had to drive a forklift truck at the weekends to save up the money for my first proper trombone. So you knew what it had cost in time, and you knew he cared. And you know he'd given up his weekends, and you know you didn't drop that bloody thing, you know, because there wasn't another one coming, you know. And I think that was the kind of upbringing that I had. And I would not wish that on my kids. But somehow you've got to teach them the value of things and teach them that it's important to strive.
So what positive can you take from that upbringing? Just the valuing.
You want to get out
Work.
of this? Work.
Yeah.
You want to make it? Work. I believe that if you, and this is partly the American dream as well, if you want to be the best, you've got to work hard and be better than everyone else. And we need to be careful that we don't get into, if you want to be better than everyone else, pull the others around you down. That's not a good way of doing it. Work, strive, go for it, you know, it's great. And I'm seeing that now starting, I think, with my son. He's starting to, because, our kids have got a tough life. They speak English at home. They're mother tongue German, Swiss German, and French. And they're 9 and 11. And so when he's doing science, he's doing it in his second or third language. You know, it's
You're like, Dad, help with my homework.
Yeah, it's like, wow, yeah. Yeah, you know. My German's good. Johanna's German is mother tongue, but her dad is German.
I know how to ask where the bathroom is.
Yeah, there you go. That's another one of our great leaders flying around the world to save us. Private jet. Okay, let's take a break and show you where the bathroom is. Good.
Okay. Oh, no, I don't need to go. I was just saying.
Oh, I thought you were doing. Let's sit down.
Yeah,
there we go.
No, it's fine.
I thought you need to know how to ask. In German, of course. Sorry.
Voice to toilette.
Oh, they voice to yeah.
That's the only. So, like, if anyone needs to
there
know where
go.
the restroom
if anything was going to be edited, there we go.
I'm good.
Yeah, no,
we'll leave that in.
But also learning a different language it changes the way you think. You know, there you learn things from a different perspective.
And in German, for example, they have so many words to describe things that we don't.
Yeah, and they're very good at sort of putting lots of words together. You know, sort of.
I've noticed. Oh,
that's the word for
Yeah. Okay, so walking through a little bit, brass band system.
Yeah.
Showed a very early aptitude. I imagine it was a blend of talent and a blend of, probably a strong work ethic from a young age.
Yeah, I don't know where this drive comes from, but I heard Star Wars, episode 4 it would have been, on the radio one Saturday morning when I was about 11, 12, I don't know, something like that. And it was like, that's it, changed my life forever. I want to be first trombone in the London Symphony.
Oh, you had a very clear goal.
In northern industrial England, and I had a dad who said, Bob, fine, yeah, you do that then.
Good.
And then 2 years later, the London Symphony ran their music scholarship, which for kids between the age of 14 and 28 or whatever. And it's like, so I get through the first round, I get through the second round. That second round, I got to meet, John Fletcher, the tuba player, and Bill Lang, the trumpet player. And it's like my dad saying, wow. And then semi-final in Manchester, and Eric Kreis was there, Dennis Witt was there, and it's like, I won the semi-final. It's like, my dad says, you're going to play concerto with the London Symphony. I was 15. Like, little school kid in the north of England. And
what did you play?
Gordon Jacob.
Oh, wow.
And the Hindemith with Peter Donahoe on piano. And
you played at the right tempo? That first
I
movement?
don't remember.
Find a pianist that can.
Peter Donahoe at the time was a freelance percussionist trying to make it as a piano soloist. And he's amazing. He's a big-time soloist now. And he played the Hindemith, and my dad thought it was too loud. So he went to me and said, it's too loud. Okay. Did it again. It's too loud. My dad, being a good northerner, walked up, just closed the lid. So I did this, and he was like, 2 weeks later, we were sitting at home and BBC Radio 4 listening to that on a Sunday morning. And last night in Moscow, the British pianist, Peter Donahoe, won the Tchaikovsky competition. My dad just
Whoa.
Oh, God. He'd put the lid down on this guy. And anyway, so I won the London Symphony, and my dad just kept saying, I think as a parent, I don't think he knew what, he just said, someone's looking after you. I don't, because I won the competition when I was 15.
That's when you realized, okay, I have this kid.
Then it was like, Dennis is going to retire at some point. I was 15, and there was a couple of them kind of went,
wow,
dabbed him. He was fifth when I was, and that's, so I went to the Hallow. Again, I took the first trombone audition in the Halle Orchestra when I was 18.
18.
And I took the excerpts. I'd never done any of the excerpts. I didn't know them. Took them to Peter Gain to teach me, and he said, no, I won't. I said, why? He said, you're 18, you're supposed to be doing this La Fosse etude. And I said, yeah, but I want to do the audition. And he said, don't do the audition. And I said, why? And he said, because you're going to win it.
Wow.
And he said, it's not what Dennis and I want for you. We want you to go and study in Paris with Michel Becquet, or in Lyon with Michel Becquet, and then go to New York, and we want you to be kind of like the Christian Lemberg. And I was very ambitious but short-sighted. I wanted a house, and a car, and a job. So I went against him. I took the Halle Orchestra audition, and I won it. And then, but I was always watching what was happening with the London Symphony. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it went that way. And then when I went to Vienna, someone said to me, he said, you may be the first person who's used the first trombone job in the London Symphony Orchestra as just another step on the ladder, you know? And I never looked at it that way, but, you know. So I think the ambition grew. When I left the London Symphony, twice the Los Angeles Philharmonic were quite, you know, made quite positive advances. And I was kind of quite keen, saying like London Symphony, Vienna Philharmonic, and then one of the top American orchestras, just from the experience point of view. And it was Johanna, who's American, you know, saying, you know, no, don't think so. So that's why we finished up coming here. So that's a very potted history. So I've always wanted to like do lots of different things. You know, I'm always obsessed with different things, collecting wine, getting interested in wine. A lot of my good friends are winemakers, and you know, gardening. Normally we're self-sufficient for vegetables, but I've spent too much time in the Alps this year.
We have a nice,
you know. This is by the way, this is the Valhalla for mice. My son has a lot of mice, and when one unfortunately leaves this mortal coil, that's where they go. So that's where Cubal, Sniff, and what's the other one called? Sniff, they're down there. So
they're with us now.
They're lovely pets.
Yeah.
They're really beautiful pets, and we have two large Maine Coon cats that might make an appearance at some point.
And we'll walk through the house a little bit at some point.
Yeah.
So
that's the potted. Yeah. I'm interested. I'm an interested person. I'm interested in people. I'm an obsessive personality. I'm obsessed with teaching. I'm obsessed with playing. I'm obsessed with everything that I do. Then in here is the recording studio, which we just finished. So we still got all the work tools out. So this is where we're going to be properly recording.
Nice and dry in here.
And it's all sound insulated. Still got to do the ceiling. So we've got that there.
What's the rim is?
Plastic sticker. It's really dirty.
I won't show it too close.
It's
cool. Very cool.
And if you want to see the wine,
nice array of pieces here.
I've never done. You know, it's like now we've got this chalet in the Alps. I never expected age 60 to become a forester. You know, so I'm working with a chainsaw tomorrow, and
that's therapeutic. Though.
Yeah, and you know, so I got a forester in to give me a 3-hour lesson on. You know, it's like and all of the researching the equipment and everything, and you know, so you don't chop your head off.
Do you have a cool like forester hat that you wear?
Oh, I've got the cut-proof shoes, trousers, the helmet, the mask. You can put that photo on if you like.
Yeah, sure.
I do that stuff.
Yeah,
and,
you know, honestly, that would have been a good podcast. We just go out there and just you give me a lesson on chopping down stuff.
You know, I wanted to do like this newsletter thing that I put out. I want to do a video with me.
Subscribe to the newsletter.
There you go. Subscribe to the newsletter. You know, if you sort of cutting a tree in the forest, you know, and sort of saying, you know, you need to follow a very strict basic technique on the chainsaw. If you don't, the consequences are serious. Unfortunately, it's not the same on the trombone, which is why you have to go for lessons. Because if you got your basic technique right early on, you wouldn't need it.
Okay, so we don't have to like spend forever on every part of the career, but it's so interesting. And you know, like you had briefly hinted at before, you didn't have a lot of major teachers because from what I read, you were in Royal Academy for like a few weeks, and then you got
Guildhall for like 10 weeks or something like that.
And then you moved on to Halle, which kind of was your early education, I guess, on the job.
I made my mistakes there, personally and playing-wise. And when I did go, that's what Peter said. He said, okay, go up there for a few years and just make your mistakes. And so I know what it's like to take a good breath, let it go and yodel something. You know, it's like I did it live. So it's like, okay, that doesn't work.
Yodel something.
Yeah, you know, that doesn't work. And also with interaction with colleagues. When I went there, they were kind of like deeply suspicious of me because I didn't drink. Because it's like morning break, they'd all go to the pub for a pint. And it's like, if I drink a pint of beer now, I can't play.
Yeah.
And I
Tolerance
didn't.
at 18.
Yeah, and I didn't drink before concerts. I drank after the concerts, but not before. And they were like, "What's with this guy? He's not." You know, it's like. But they got used to it. I think they saw me drinking after the concerts and realised, okay, no,
he's okay.
No, he's okay.
He's okay. And then London was 11 years in the London.
12.
12 years.
My life works on 12-year cycles. Yeah.
You know. Studying your bio, I kind of noticed that.
I didn't realise, but that's the Ayurvedic Indian sort of like people who are apparently on a spiritual spiritual path. They're going to different phases every 12 years. And I didn't know that. Johanna pointed it out to me because she gets up every morning and does 2 hours of yoga and meditation. She said, look at this, you've done the 12-year thing.
Kind of resonates
So every
with me,
12
honestly.
years, I changed my job, my wife, and my country.
Don't say that part out loud.
It's true. It just seemed to be 12 years.
Well,
and we've gone over 12 years now, and we're really happy. So that's
awesome. And that's something I resonate with you on. And as far as, you know, I like doing a lot of different things. I've always enjoyed that. And of course, as a musician, you want to find some level of stability. And I find stability by doing a lot of different things. But like you know, you fight against that in finding the perfect balance. Like you get this job that's a big, principal trombone in the London Symphony is a big responsibility. That's a big time commitment. But you also like have this inner thing to do a lot of different things.
I think when I was in the London Symphony, I think the brass section was that good that we were just high on being together, to be honest.
That's beautiful.
Was just... And you could fight one day and have a coffee the next day. The working relationships were just amazing. Those films that we did in the 90s and, you know, a lot of the recordings. We made that many recordings. I've never really listened to them. But I go back occasionally and think, oh, yeah, I played on that. And you listen and you think, wow.
You ever like watching a movie and you're like, that sounds...
That did happen. Cape Fear was one where he's like...
That's a big one.
He's like, animals, what are they? And he's like, oh, oops. And so we were just really high on partying, playing too loud, having fun.
What age were you during that London years?
22, 23 when I started, and did 12 years. And
22, 35.
Michael Tilson Thomas was the music director,
Wow.
which was the happiest time I've ever had in an orchestra.
So a young man that grew up, you know, with meager beginnings, and you're in one of the greatest cities in the world in your early 20s, having an awesome job. Like, that could be very easy to be distracted in the wrong ways. But that had to be so fun.
I partied a bit too hard.
Yeah.
And at the cost of my first marriage. And you live with the mistakes you make, you know. I was just having fun, I think. Everyone was having fun. Those days with Michael conducting were just brilliant. It's not like that there now. The atmosphere is not the same. And I was still trying to learn how to play the trombone. In fact, I talked to Thomas Lubitz, who's the head of research and development for Yamaha Europe. I had a coffee with him. I still have lots of friends in Yamaha, even though I'm involved with a different company. It's nice to still have the personal, side of things. I'm very close to the Getson family, Brett and Adam, it's fantastic. But I talked to Thomas, and he said, I think that trombone that we made in the 90s was a good one. And I said, I think it was too. I said, but the problem was I didn't know myself. I couldn't work out what was me and what was the instrument. And he said, but you were first trombone in the London Symphony. And I said, yeah, but that doesn't mean to say that I understood how I played. And I didn't,
With the, there's the giant cat you were telling me about. You have a tiger near your pool.
Yeah, no, that's Kenzo. He's a smart Kenzo. Hello, fella. Monty's even bigger than that. Yeah.
Did you have trouble balancing this youthful, like, first time being a professional, and maybe, as you said, partying a bit too much?
The whole orchestra was.
The whole orchestra, I'm sure. Like, that sounds like
it was just like it was like being in a heavy metal band. It was just like a moving party.
Were you able to keep your? Was it a work hard, play hard situation? Like you still kept your level.
Oh, that was still the most important thing. It's like you would. Yeah, no, it never reached the point where it would spill over to the next day's concert or whatever. No. It was because
the dream.
The main thing was it was like. We had an atmosphere of, we just went for everything. I mean, it was led by Maurice Murphy, the first trumpet player, and he was just like, oh, wow, some of this, like, it was frankly too loud, a lot of it, but it was very, very, very bloody exciting. And a lot of brass players used to fly a long way if we did the Alpine Symphony or something like that to come and hear it, So that was great. Musicians in London, they don't have that much stability, employment or financial. And in order to survive, they work even harder now. But back then, I remember when I first went to the London Symphony, Hans Strelke, the bass trombone player in the Vienna Philharmonic, stood side stage, and we did that Brahms Schoenberg piano quintet with Tilson Thomas in Salzburg at the festival. And there's a bit where the first trombone goes, and Michael had realized that I could do it fast, so it went pretty fast. And Hans said, let's go for a beer. So we went for a beer, and he said, when Rudy Yotzel resigns from the Vienna Philharmonic, please will you come and take the audition? And I just joined the London Symphony. It was like, yeah, whatever, kind of thing.
Nice thing to hear.
Yeah, and then Rudy was going to retire. Hans called me and said, look, Rudy's going to retire. Will you do the audition? And I don't think so, no. London, no. And I did a period of 60 days without a day off. And my wife said, this is going to kill you, What about the audition in Vienna? And so I sent Hans a fax back in those days, a fax saying, is it too late to apply? And he said, no, it's not.
Wow.
I'll take this as your application kind of thing. So that's how that happened. And I'd never done an audition behind a screen. And in fact, I've only ever done 2 auditions in my life. And I just sort of wanted to do the experience. And I'd always fallen in love with the Vienna Philharmonic. I loved the orchestra. I loved the sound. So I thought, if I'm ever going to do an audition outside of the UK, that'd be the one. So I did, and then I won it. And the only time in my life I've ever suffered with depression, you would think it would be absolutely elation. It was, and it was a bottle of champagne, and then I just crashed.
Yeah.
I dedicated 6 months of practice for that audition. I took a month off from the London Symphony, and there was no doubt about what was going to happen in that audition.
So you felt a release?
No, it was like, all I thought about was winning the audition. I hadn't thought about whether I wanted the job. And I got home and it's like, what have you done? You've got kids that live 100 yards from you. We'd got separated and we bought 2 houses, 100 yards of... Your first trombone in the London Symphony. You teach at the Royal Academy of Music. What are you doing? And then I remember talking to Hans a week later and he said, Ian, are you going to turn us down? I said, no, I'm not.
How long did you think about it?
A month.
That's a big life change.
Because travel wasn't so easy those days, and I was so busy, I hadn't gone over to sign the contract. So it wasn't a month, and it was a month until I could go back and sign. I went back and I did, and I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And so I'd set 3 years. I'll do 3 years there, and then I will buy a farm in France and become a soloist. That was going to be the deal.
Okay.
And
Had you ever played with them, like just subbing?
Nothing.
So you
Nothing.
accepted
yeah,
before you
I've
even...
heard them live once or twice, and of course a lot on recordings. And so he's like, well, I'll give it a go. And what I discovered is that when you leave home for 3 years, part of you never goes back, and I became European. I was no longer totally English in my attitude and the way I saw life and in my life expectations. So I couldn't,
Wow.
I've never really felt totally at home in England since then. And I'm certainly not at home here. I'm not Swiss.
Yeah.
And whatever the passports may say, you know, and so once you've left your roots for a certain length of time, I don't think you ever really go back.
Wow.
And you're never really at home.
But there's got to be part of that within you, right?
That feels at home. The laughter. When I go back and hang out with British brass players and I cry until I laugh every day, yeah, that I really bloody miss. When I was in the London Symphony, we used to laugh until we cried every day, usually at my expense. You know, it was, it was incredible from that point of view. You know.
So you've been quoted as saying,
"Oh dear."
I'm really proud of myself for remembering, and of course I'll mess it up. But the London Symphony taught me how to play the trombone. The Vienna Philharmonic taught me how to be a musician.
It's true. My musical education was in Vienna, and my brass playing education was in the London Symphony. Yeah. 47 of the 50 best concerts I ever did in my life were probably in Vienna.
Wow.
And I think largely that's because of the quality of the string section. They are just immense. Right back to the last desk of every section. They're just incredible musicians. Certainly when I was there, who were committed to every single bloody note that they played. And there were old guys. When I joined the Vienna Philharmonic, it was a grey, bold orchestra. And they had their heritage going back to Metropolis and Karajan and Furtwängler and all that sort of stuff. And they worked so damned hard, and every night they'd sit there and go, bang! You know, it's like, wow, what is this, you know? Just total commitment. So...
I'd be curious if...
The London Symphony is a great orchestra.
Oh, of course.
Don't
no one's...
get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's just there was... I think, you know, maybe even player for player, the London Symphony was better. But there was an aspect of communication and, you know, the string...
Identity.
There's a difference between a brass section going for it and a bloody string section going for it. I nearly went back in 2016. What was it Michael Caine says? I mean, not many people know this. They got me to go back for a month in 2016, and they did concert performance of the last act of Götterdämmerung in Carnegie Hall. And Gergiev was conducting. Gergiev said, we should at least play it once. Didn't want to rehearse it, because the orchestra knows it that well. And it was my first day back, and the orchestra decided to play it in a rehearsal. I mean, like, really play it, just for fun. And I was sitting there like this, like, so no one could see I was crying my eyes out.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're in the middle of something like that, and the president of the orchestra I could see him, he came to the end of the rehearsal and he said, time to come home. You know, and I said, I don't know, you know. And then I got bored. And you know.
Did you have to change anything about how you played or equipment to fit that sound?
Equipment, no. No, equipment was the same.
Because you're kind of like, I see you from the outside as, there's very different ways of playing here, and sometimes it can be an insular thing, and sometimes they have a stereotype about players from a certain area, and you're kind of this like bridge between the two for some young students, I feel like, because you've experienced going in that direction.
I think because I was never indoctrinated by a teacher, indoctrination is too strong, but I hear a lot of people for example, who study with you name it, and they sound like that player. I don't, I had my idols. I loved Dennis Wick. I first heard Dennis Wick play live with the London Symphony in 1979. Never forget it. Never forget it. The most electrifying thing. Changed my life. And then the next one who influenced me actually was Glenn Dodson. I heard him play Shostakovich 5 with the Philadelphia Orchestra in 1989, and it was remarkable. He was playing on a Bach 42 with a Bach 6.5 AL mouthpiece, and he wasn't working. He was just sitting. He was the only one you could hear at the back, and it was a great. That was my influences, was listening to other people, not being told things by somebody. Or said, I play it like this, you play it like that. I don't want my students to sound like me. I want my students to sound like them. If I'm really honest, I don't think I ever truly 100% fitted in stylistically in Vienna. The articulation and the sound, you can assimilate. Yes, you can do that. But the musical understanding is something that I think to an extent you need to be born into.
Wow.
And there are a lot of sons, now daughters, of former members in the orchestra in Vienna. And when you look at it, it's logical. They're born being immersed in that sound and that style. So I would like to, one of the reasons why I would have been interested, past tense, been interested to go to an American orchestra would be to adapt my style to playing in a different way. I always find it interesting, certainly young American players write to me and saying, I'm thinking of studying in Europe. Okay, well, Europe is about 80 different ways of playing. What exactly do you mean by that? It's like, I'm sure I hear Americans talk about the stylistic difference between New York and Chicago, and sure. Multiply that by 100 over here. Jacques Mauger right now is 30 minutes that way. Wow. So the stylistic changes that you're going to get through, throughout Europe is huge. And bless it. Long may it remain that way, and I like it. I think the one thing that has disappointed me with trombone players over the years is I have spent my life learning to love different styles of playing, whilst many of those different types of playing have tried to say that what I'm doing is wrong. That I've realized that the open-mindedness is not universal. And you get the cults of this type of playing, or the cults of this school of playing, and we don't talk to these people, and we don't work with these people, but if you zoom out a little bit, the difference between them is not that big. And I think and I'm at the far end of my career, certainly teaching-wise, so it's not something that bothers me, but I do observe that. And I think it's stronger in Europe than it is in America. I think in America there's much more camaraderie, and I think if someone from San Diego was to move to Boston and they played really well, the Boston trombone players would say, come on, have a beer. Let's say, we've got this work for you. In Europe it'd be like, wow. I'm very much at a distance in Switzerland, partly of my own choosing, because I don't play in orchestras anymore. It's, but partly it's like, this guy's not from here, so I live here, but and that tends to be more the European way. When you leave your home country, like Christian Lindbergh has never cut off his, support supply. He's working where he was born and has all of his contacts. If I want someone to do me a favour or help me, I call someone up in the north of England, or someone in England, not someone around here, That's my life support system is still in England. That's the European landscape is. I always, when someone writes and says, look, I'm thinking of studying in Europe, I say, right, look at this from a business point of view. What do you want to do? You want to play an orchestra? Which classes are getting students into jobs? It doesn't matter whether you like teachers or not. I like this person. Yeah, but has his student How many students win a job, you know? And then do a lesson tour. I have that. I have a fantastic Australian boy in my class now, and I'm not sure how much longer he'll be there. And he came over and had 14 lessons. You know, and so you can work out, who do you think will do, I mean, let's take, for example, as an American player, it'd be a great accolade to get into Joe Alessi's class. And so it'd be very easy for people to think, I got into Juilliard, I've got into Joe Alessi's class. But the point is, if you're good enough to get into that class, is that person the one who you really think can do the job for you? And students very rarely think that. And so when someone comes to a lesson with me and says they want to study with me, it's like, you have to be absolutely convinced that I can do this for you. Can I help you? Am I the one to fulfill your dreams? And I don't think enough students think of it that way, you know?
So we normally, we close all of our interviews with a rapid fire section.
Go for it.
And so there's just a few questions I'll throw out. So you just turned 60, am I correct?
Yeah.
6 years, you know, how's that?
Awful.
That's not a rapid fire question. Really?
Awful.
Look at all this stuff. You just described your schedule. Tell me the average 6-year-old's traveling all over the world and...
You know, yeah, it's like 30-year-old, you don't know, 40s, well, okay. 50, you don't really know, 60s, like, this is getting serious. This is like, time's running out now. So whatever you want to do in life, you better get on with it. That one hit me really hard. And so I'm just determined to do what I want to do. I'm enjoying being a dad very much. We have an insane life. The quality of life, you know, some people have they have a run of bad luck in life and they sit down and they say, why me? I have it for the other reason. I sit down and I think, you know what? Other people practiced hard as well. Why you? And so I have a little bit of a guilty conscience, you know, on that point of view. But I realize I have an obligation to try and be a dad for as long as I can. So I try and stay in shape. I try and stay fit. And I don't know how much longer I'll teach. I love it. I love teaching, but like you say, doing different things. So Bern will kick me out in 5 years' time.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's the thing
like,
here.
Yeah, and there are other
65
places that have now come and said, oh, so what are you planning on doing after you're 65? We don't kick people. So,
okay.
But I'm enjoying my playing more than ever. I think I'm playing better than I ever have done. I think I am not a salesman. Genuinely, the equipment that Kristen is making for me, I have the best instrument in my hands now that I've ever had.
Awesome.
I think, I think the reason why I like Kristen, and look, guys, let's leave the selling stuff out of this, is what I love about him is he's the same as me. He was given a job when he was a kid that he wasn't qualified to do. You know, they just said, okay, come and replace, was it Gary Greenhaw and Steve Greenhaw? He was Steve Shires. Gary Greenhaw and Steve Shires were replaced by a 22-year-old student from North Texas.
Yeah, figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And so he knows he has to continue learning. So we're both learning together the whole time. Brett and Adam Getson let him do it. And there aren't many bosses that would let you do that either. So
I was an Edwards person for like the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So like, yeah.
And so I'm enjoying playing with some really good brass ensembles. I'm enjoying that. And I'm enjoying having fun with great players. And I love my teaching. But like I say, that's going to probably, in the next 5 years or so. So if you want to be some of my last students, get in there quick.
Video.
Get in there quick. Okay, so that wasn't a quick fire. That wasn't a...
Well, I didn't give you a quick fire. Yeah. I just thought of that while asking that. And I had listened to a recent recording of yours where you're very honest on these podcasts, which I really appreciate. It's very refreshing. Like you said, it's kind of therapy. But the first question we always ask, turning 60 now, advice to your 18-year-old self.
Stop being an idiot. Advice to you don't realize what you could achieve. Take this more seriously.
But did making those mistakes, was that a good learning experience? Was it a necessary thing?
There's some painful ones. It's learned, yeah, I had to learn a lot of things. If you want to see the wine.
Oh yeah, I forgot to ask you about
This is
wine.
a nuclear bomb shelter, by the way.
No way.
Yeah. Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a... Oh, I need to put that on. Yes, a nuclear bomb shelter.
So you're prepared for everything.
Yeah. So this is the
All right.
wine cellar, and
A few selections.
all of the boxes are all full. So there you go. It's all full stuff.
Do you, what's the bottle you're most like proud of that you're not going to open until?
All of the ones these are all my friends. So it's like more of the I'm proud of the relationship. I'm happy with the relationship that I have with my friends. Most of these are made by people I know.
Oh wow.
And that that one, that's my daughter's name.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, there we go. So, yeah, that's
Very cool.
Let's go, and then we'll go that way. And that's the swimming pool pump that is running. And there's the steam room over there.
Okay.
And we're going to put a new heating system in now. And yeah. So there we go.
Very cool.
Just remind you
I didn't tell you what I'm doing this afternoon. It's
Yeah, what are
something
you doing?
you've done. I'm going to go paragliding with
Justin.
which I'm like half scared, half excited. I watched yours. You handled it well.
Oh, it didn't bother me at all. If you climb a ladder that's like 10 feet, that's scary.
Yeah.
If
What's
you're
up there?
6,000 feet, it's like,
Yeah.
it's so far away you can't even get scared.
Don't even think about it. Yeah.
But he did injure someone, so...
Yeah, I did. I heard about that. You know, I just turned 40 recently, a year ago, 41. What would you give? What advice would you give to me at this point in my career? I'm in the middle of my career.
And that's really interesting because you asked what I would advise the 18-year-old me, and actually advising the 40-year-old is easier. And follow your artistic goals, your musical pursuits. Don't follow the money. I did. It's very difficult to say one regrets following the money, but I think partly because I was raised without money, and my hero was Dennis Wick. I was so success in the old school way of like, well, it's how much money are you making? And when I look at somebody like Jürgen van der Rijen, I have the immense respect for what he's doing because he's following his artistic goals. I don't think money's that important to him. He just wants to make the music that he wants to make. And so I regret not pursuing the solo aspects of things as much as I could have, as in not commissioning new pieces and pursuing because there are two types of soloists. There's the trombone festival soloist who plays at the ITF and goes to universities, and all trombone players know about those people. But then there are real soloists, those who do concertos with orchestras. If you can think of the trumpet players, Håkan Hardenberger, people like that, that they do the Boston Symphony with Nelson's, and they travel all around. And I never gave it enough of a shot to have done that. I had enough conductors who were close friends, and the key to it is commissioning new pieces. And I wish I'd done that. And I might have taken a financial hit for a few years, but at 40, I think I could have made that happen. And so that would be my advice to you is, if there's anything artistically, because there's a reason why you took up the trombone, and it certainly wasn't to make money.
It's not the guitar.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
yeah. So that would be my advice to any 40-year-old is, I guess I will probably finish my career thinking I could have done more. But I'm that type of person anyway. My wife and I are both the same. It's I'm impossible to insult. Absolutely.
Oh.
You can say any. You can
you
really
should have told me that at the
You
beginning
can
of
go
the
for
interview.
it. You cannot offend me. The only way you can get to me is tell me I didn't do my best.
Oh.
And my wife and I both say, I know that whatever happens, I must not say she didn't do it, you know, or even hint that, you know. And I'm a bit the same. And I think at the end of the day, I think I will probably think I could have done more, you know? So.
Okay. A question we always close with, what is something that, and I'm very curious to hear your answer, what is something that students, the average student pursuing music, should do more of that they're not doing enough of?
Learn to think for themselves.
Learn to think for themselves.
Learn to form your own opinions without any arrogance. And from what I can see, and it's not their fault, it's the way education systems are set up, students come in thinking that a teacher's going to tell them what to do and then they'll be successful. And it's actually a process, if you want to be very successful, of learning how to think for yourself. Because if you can think for yourself, you're giving yourself a lesson every minute you pick the trombone up. Rather than thinking, is that what he or she meant? Or, you know, is that what they meant when they give me a lesson? You know, it's like, so I think, yeah, learning to think, learning to listen, learning to think. And I think that big one, which I already mentioned, learning to work without expectation of reward. If you're expecting anything out of that 2 hours in the practice room, forget it. You might see the rewards in 5 years. You know, so I think
Marathon, not a sprint.
yeah, I think that's it. And yeah, speaking of the marathon or a sprint, I think when you're teaching, you get someone in, it's like, what can I do to change this person's life right now? What can I do in 2 weeks and what can I do in a year? You're looking at the three different things the whole time. So what can I give them? What is the low-hanging fruit? Here, do this. It's a little tip. It'll make it better. And then what can I put in a bit of work to do over the next week to 2 weeks? And what can I do without mentioning to them around the back door that's going to change the way they think over the next 1 to 2 years?
Wow.
And that's, you know, so that level of, you know, guidance and, you know, from a teacher, I think teachers don't always think about that. You know, it's like this goes like this and this goes like that. But they're more coaches than teachers. So, yeah, good.
I love that answer. So, in closing, is there anything that we didn't talk about or didn't mention or I didn't ask that you would just like to say in closing?
I don't know, really. I talk about anything you like. I mean, I'm kind of...
You're so shy.
Well, I kind of don't readily talk about things, but if you push me, I'll go. You know, you just give me the odd word or two. No, I don't think so. I think we could cover a lot more things.
I feel like we could talk about a lot of things.
You know, I mean, you could go into instrument design and all that sort of stuff. And that, I tell you what, instrument design, which I've been doing for 35 years, that is really the ultimate example of the more you think you know, the more you actually realize you don't know anything at all. Nothing at all.
I just designed a mouthpiece, a custom mouthpiece that came out, and it's we don't have to talk about it, but it's been a fascinating experience. And it's
what
the
you
exact
think
same
makes
thing.
a difference, and actually,
And the maker that's making it doesn't want you to come up with like technical details of like, he's like, what sound difference do you want? Not like, oh, I'm curious what happens when you do this and put this on it, you know? Oh, hello.
And this is perfect timing. The star of the show
goodbye.
has now arrived. This is Monty.
Wow, look at that lion.
A sweetheart. Oh my good boy. He's an absolute sweetheart. Good boy. Say bye-bye. There you go. He's a good boy.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with me and opening up your home.
Lovely to meet you.
It's really nice to meet you again. Yeah. And you know, your contributions to the music world, to the trombone world, they're continuing, and I hope to cross paths with you more in the future and do more things. But it's just really cool getting to hang. I've been wanting to talk to you like this for a while, because I knew you'd be so insightful and thoughtful, and so
lovely. Well, thank you for what you're doing with these podcasts, because it's really you will be bringing your own community together. You know, so that's fantastic too. So, yeah. Well done.
Awesome.
Thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, very
great.
Cool.